All right, we'll go ahead and call the August 10th, 2026 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals to order. We'll start with roll call. If everyone could just, instead of me saying your names, if we just want to start over here with Greg, we'll all say our names.
Greg Zink.
Lori Jackson.
Anthony Cyphers.
Jake Vissing, City Attorney.
James Moore.
Chuck Williams.
All right, with that, we only have one order of business before us. I do not have the docket number in front of me, but it is
2026-7.
2026-7. This is a continuation from last meeting. We held a public hearing in which we voted to table the matter seeking some additional information. And that is what we are here tonight to discuss and to get to the bottom of and then figure out what we're going to do. So, I know James was not here last meeting, so he's just looking over some photos. Ronnie, if you don't mind, would you come up here so we can get an update on a couple things? So the question, I believe, and anyone correct me if I'm misspeaking, just so that we can kind of rehash and for everyone's benefit, know where we're at. There was a variance application for a 3-foot variance. The question was, or the applicable side with the application was on the west side of the house. The questions, though, that were brought up were two. One was on the west side. Was it a 3-foot variance being requested or a 5-foot and it was 3 foot off the property line? That small detail that does matter just for purpose of granting the variance there. And then looking at the east side, we realized we didn't really know, we didn't have the answer to at that time where the property line was. So was the variance, whatever was being sought, was it enough to sort of encompass both sides of the property with the deck, not just the one? So that's where we were having some question because we couldn't really make a decision until we got some clarification on those issues. Were you, Ronnie, able to get with the applicant and figure that?
Yes.
Out?
The variance was filed for on the east side of the property.
Or I'm sorry, am
Instead of the
I
west.
mixed up? I'm saying east versus west on the
Yeah.
opposite.
It's
Okay,
actually the east side.
I'm sorry.
And the property is currently zoned R2. And when they filed for the variance, we went down and measured. It all started when he put the deck over on this property line. And so, and there was a concern that if a fire or something broke out, they could not get between them. And the adjoining property owner didn't agree. She did get a variance back in several years ago put her deck against the property line. And so I advised him that he'd either have to take it off or come in and get a variance. So that's what he's here tonight for, to get the variance. And right now, as the pictures show, it's sticking out about 3 feet past the house.
So, just so you guys know, that is the original deck, and then he redid it
Okay.
to that. So originally it was that, then he took it up and redid it to be that.
I believe both parties are in agreement on where the property line is on the east side.
Okay. So, and you're saying that other fence is, or the other deck is on the property line?
Yes.
Okay. So setback in R2 is 8?
Mhm.
So really the house itself is,
Yeah.
Doesn't
Of course, those houses were built before zoning.
Of
Yeah,
course.
so if they were built prior to the adoption of the current zoning ordinance with the current setbacks, then they would be typically considered legal non-conforming. You you just couldn't go out and now make them occupy a larger non-conforming footprint.
And I don't know that this doesn't mean that we can't handle this tonight, but one thing just for bookkeeping and for clarity purposes, I know Ronnie had mentioned last meeting, again, I'm not out there with the tape measure. I'd just like to see that application updated. That's gonna be in a file somewhere. That this looks to be about 3 feet off the property line, and if the setback is 8 feet, instead of asking for a 3-foot variance, it'd be a 5-foot. So just, it's technicality, but I think it matters, because 10 years from now, no one's gonna remember what the heck anyone talked about or meant, you know? So I'd like to see that. Now, my question though was on, if I could see those real quick. If this is the east side, I think the question that sort of stumped me last time, where I really felt, and the applicant can chime in here if he knows the answer too. Whereas I'm looking at a picture of the west side of the house, and I see where the deck is, and there's some cars, and you can kind of see the driveway. Where is the property line, roughly speaking, in relation to the deck on the west side of the house?
So from what my measurements and from the deed, and going from the 24 feet over on Ms. Sosa's property, the deed says, and then it comes over 34 feet, it's almost a foot still to the right, is from my measurements.
So a foot to the right of the deck?
Yes.
If you're facing the deck?
Yes.
Okay. So there,
That's not an actual survey, just from what the measurements.
okay. So then let me back up. You see now where with the application itself and potentially granting a variance goes. If we're only a foot on that side, now we need a 7-foot variance. We need to ask for 7 feet instead of 5 feet now, because on that side, we're all but a foot off.
Am I making sense, or am I being too?
Well, so if you're, I guess to break this down, so on the east side of the property, which was the subject of the application, the ask is for the ability to build 3 feet into the setback. It's an 8-foot setback, so, you know, if essentially it would have to be built to 5 feet off of the boundary line. And again, we don't have a survey before us. We don't have kind of renderings of where it is relative to the actual monumented boundary line. But if the board were to grant a variance as to that east side of the property with that a variance to allow building 3 feet into the 8-foot setback, then it would need to be 5 feet off the boundary line to be in compliance with that variance. The other issue that you're bringing up is a potential apparent setback issue with regard to the deck on the west side of the property, which the applicant estimates to be roughly 1 foot off of the boundary line. If a variance were sought as to that side, the board could entertain 2 separate variances as to the east side of the property and the west side of the property. It wouldn't all necessarily have to be a uniform variance sought. That's the purpose of the variance process, is to entertain both of those based on the particular facts and circumstances relative to that request.
And that's what I was just going off of, is a variance was issued for the person who owned the house before Ms. Sosa, a variance was issued to go right on the property line, no setback. And so that was just.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but a variance is granted just to so it's granted specific to the property for which it's sought. And at times, it could even be limited to, in terms of, if you think of a use variance, to just a particular owner, not just, running with the property into the future. So, a variance that was granted for a separate property, neighboring property, no benefit of that variance would be given to a neighboring property.
And I guess, and where I was coming at, I think with this is just trying to, we're talking about the deck as a whole. Obviously, we can look at one side versus the other, but my thought was if we could talk about, trying to get to where we can talk about and discuss and figure something out for the whole thing, and that way it's just done. That's my goal. That's what I'm after, not to make things difficult.
Trying to have privacy for us, trying to have privacy for them, that was the biggest
Sure.
thing. And then to have, where you can actually walk out the back door and get back.
Sure.
So,
Does anyone else, I mean, I feel like I've asked my questions. Does anyone else have any questions right now? As far as discussion goes, I think when we look at what are the criteria we need to meet to grant a variance, I feel like especially this side here, the east side sort of checks all the boxes. This seems to be based on the construction age of the homes when they were made, when they were built before zoning. I mean, neither house, it would seem, meets the current setback requirements. The houses themselves don't. Right. So this is a very peculiar situation, not, typical to something we'd see in new houses built today. It doesn't feel, when it comes to this side of the property, to me anyway, please feel free to oppose me on this, it doesn't feel right that there's the same thing over on the other side. The benefit of the use here for this homeowner, it seems that it would be logical to allow them the same.
And I think that you
Use
went
of
to
the
the
property.
measurements to the shortest deck down to where it's not right on top. Like they
Right.
say, in case there is
yeah.
an emergency or something like that too, they can always head
Yeah.
to the backyards.
Yeah, there's a cut through there that a person could pretty easily, it seems pretty easily make it through. So if there were a need to go around, there's no, seems like that got rid of a potential hazard and danger there. So.
And just to remind the board, so the criteria, and there's criteria under the zoning ordinance as well as under Indiana statute. So under the Salem zoning ordinance, for developmental standards variance to be approved, it may be approved when such departure from the developmental standards is not contrary to public interest and due to conditions peculiar to the property and not a result of the actions of the applicant. A literal enforcement of the Salem zoning ordinance would result in unnecessary and undue hardship. That's the zoning ordinance's criteria. The Indiana statutory criteria under Indiana Code 36-7-4-918.5 states that a developmental standards variance may be approved only upon a determination that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Second, that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. And third, that the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So if you were inclined to approve the variance that's being sought, you would have to find in the affirmative on all three of those criteria.
Barring any unknown information, I don't personally see
I was gonna say, I
how
feel like
this,
it
it
fits.
fits all of those
Yeah, I was gonna
criteria.
say, he took the extra step to kind of shorten the deck down, where it wasn't doing any of those, so.
Again, it's hard with these houses built the way they were, where they were on the parcels of land, to apply the rules strictly, because like I said, I don't think these houses themselves meet current
No,
setback.
exactly.
Could we,
So you're saying, say 3 feet on the east side?
You could say 3 feet, you could have the variance be 3 feet on the east, and, it would be 7 feet on the western side of the property.
And that would make it
I've got
all,
a question. Okay, we're talking about a deck right now. We make this variance. How can they put that under roof.
No, without coming
It would be limited to a deck.
It'd be limited to what we approve.
Okay. that's what I was-
And you can add conditions to the approval that, you know, it remain an uncovered deck, that, you know, that there be no further expansion beyond the approved footprint, you know, expanding the nonconformity.
I was just trying to think down the road, you know,
What could happen?
what could happen.
Mhm.
So Chuck, if it's okay, could I would you withdraw your
Yes,
motion and let me make the motion?
Yeah, word doc.
I would make a motion that we approve a setback.
Is a matter of order,
I can't.
the president, the presiding member should not be
Okay.
offering a motion.
Right. So I make a motion that we make the ordinance for the, make it fit, of the setbacks of what it needs. So 3 feet on one side and you're saying 5 feet on the other.
So it would be 3 feet on the
The
eastern
eastern
side
side.
and 7 feet
feet.
on the western side.
Western side, to make it fit and work.
Okay. Motion has been made.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the variance has been granted. With that, Ronnie, I don't think there's any other business for us to
No.
discuss tonight. Okay.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.